In this episode, we came up with a consensus top 10 list between Joe and I of players that we're concerned about. These guys are right on the edge, and it's a make or break year. They have to, it's what we like to say, put up or shut up, or else their dynasty values could be forever vanished, right? These are guys that had a lot of promise, but this is a time where they really need to start showing up. So, Joe, who are we talking about first?
All right, so our first player, Dave, is going to be quarterback Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, we think this is really the put up or shut up time for Trevor Lawrence. He's gone through a few head coaches in his career here. They bring over Liam Cohen to really, in my eyes, fix Trevor Lawrence and get something out of him. Seeing him have success in Tampa Bay, with Baker Mayfield. But, they got Travis Hunter now, got Brian Thomas Jr. there, Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne in the backfield as well. They drafted Bashal Tutin, another piece in the offense there to see what he brings as far as explosiveness in the run game. So they're getting all these pieces. I feel like to just figure out what they have in Trevor Lawrence, hope if he's going to be able to stay healthy. But this is a guy, we're concerned about because he's just really been underwhelming. His rookie year, he had 3,641 yards. Then the next two that he had 4,000 yards. Obviously, last year was really disappointing. Also was battled injuries. Only had 2,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. His passer rating hasn't been all that impressive either. So if we feel like if Trevor Lawrence doesn't perform this year, is he ever going to perform for you? And with his contract situation too, that from that standpoint, they did invest in Trevor Lawrence, for whatever reason there, and it's going to be tough for them to get out of it, honestly, until 2028 when his dead cap hit would potentially get down to $7.5 million. But until then, right now it's sitting at over $100 million, then $88 million and $44 million.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Trevor Lawrence, you alluded to the contract here, Joe. I don't think he would get cut because if you look at, like you said, I mean, unless you have like a Russell Wilson type of, dead cap cut, which, more teams may do because as you're seeing more and more quarterbacks getting paid so much. But Liam Cohen, if he can't turn Trevor Lawrence around or there's not enough promise in there that would indicate it, I think he could very well be, this could be it for him. I mean, he really hasn't been all that impressive. I mean, his sophomore and junior campaign here, he had over 4,000 yards, but he had 25 touchdowns and 8 picks, and the other one he had 21 touchdowns and 14 picks. It's pretty lackluster for a guy who was the number 1 overall pick, who many believe thought he was going to be the next best thing.
Yeah, everyone thought he was going to be the next best thing, hence why he was the number 1 pick. And, something to keep in mind as well. I mean, not only Liam Cohen, but new GM as well. So, like, if they don't see it this year, then they easily could move off of him after this year.
So the next guy we're going to be talking about here is tight end Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. He is entering in his final year of his rookie contract under that club option, so which means that he will be a free agent next year, which, I mean, he's only 25 years old. He'll be 26 years old when he's a free agent. So he's still relatively young, came into the NFL when he was 21 years old. So that is something that's going for him. But overall, Kyle Pitts has been a pretty severe disappointment, a guy who many, have drafted pretty high, including myself, in redraft leagues, hoping that something would come of it, and nothing really has. Other than his rookie year where he had over 1,000 yards, he really hasn't done much. He's not even got sniffed close to 1,000 yards. And the most amount of touchdowns he's ever had was 4 touchdowns last year. He's had 4, 3, 2, 1. A guy who has immense potential. In a lot of ways has been seen as a top dynasty asset for tight ends. And I mean, if you look at the numbers and everything else, he doesn't cut it.
Yeah, no, he definitely doesn't cut it. And honestly, like, I feel like Atlanta just doesn't even utilize him enough. For as highly as they drafted him, I thought he'd be a lot heavier utilized in the offense. Maybe that'll change this year, get a full year of Michael Penix Jr. here at quarterback. That's also been, part of the problem. His best year was, rookie year with Matt Ryan there. And then it's just kind of been quarterback carousel since. Thought things would be better with Kirk Cousins. That didn't really work out. So maybe Michael Penix could be the savior for Kyle Pitts here.
He's a guy who would be really interesting. We're saying he must deliver. I think we do think it's a make or break year. He could sign a prove it deal next off season and maybe just is electric with some other team. Maybe just Atlanta doesn't know how to use him. That's quite possible. But the sand in the hourglass is dwindling for Kyle Pitts and his dynasty value.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's already been dipping every year since his rookie year as he just continues to disappoint.
All right, Joe, who is our next player?
Our next player, we're going to go with running back Najee Harris of now the Los Angeles Chargers. And we've got him in on our list here because he signed with the Los Angeles Chargers, but it's only a 1-year deal here. So to me, he's got to go ahead and, really deliver this year in order to put some, good tape out there, have good production for him to go ahead and get signed by another team and a potential, not just signed by another team, but have a potential of being a starter as well. Because, a lot of these guys, once you get to your second and third contracts, it's not a guarantee that they're going to just go in and be the starter somewhere. And, running back by committee is the thing here from all teams. And even for this year for the Chargers, as, they drafted Amarian Hampton in the first round as well. But I think despite the drafting of Hampton, I think Najee Harris, at least this year, will have the opportunity to have the majority of the touches, be the primary back in the Los Angeles Chargers backfield here. Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball. Najee Harris, despite kind of being disappointing for fantasy, I mean, he's proven in his production. I mean, he's had over 1,000 yards. He does get an upgrade in offensive line and just overall like play style of the offense with the Chargers. So I think there is a good chance that he could deliver and improve his value, and we'll see where he goes after this year.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. If he doesn't perform, I mean, he didn't get all that much. I mean, look at the contract. He got a 1-year, $5.25 million contract. And that's considering, think about this, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, that was all last year. And those guys got quite a substantial amount of money for the running back position. So for him to only get a 1-year deal for that little kind of showed his market. Wasn't all that good, unless he thought that going to LA could just really help him. But with the Omarion Hampton selection, I'm sure he couldn't have been happy about that and his opportunity there. So he'll be 28 years old next year, which is getting older and up there. And he's had a lot of carries too. And those treading those tires are getting worn out. So it'll be interesting to see what has to happen with Najee. But I think you and I both believe he has to deliver if his dynasty value and his longevity is going to continue.
Yeah, 100%. He has to deliver it this year, and he's got to, perform similarly to J.K. Dobbins last year. Have a really good year. I know Dobbins hasn't been picked up here, but I think that has to do a lot of his injury history. Where we mentioned it all the time. Like Najee's been able to stay healthy and play every game.
This one pains me to say it, but our next player here is going to be quarterback Anthony Richardson. I, like many others, were duped at his potential ceiling and the possibility of him partnering with Shane Steichen. But what a disaster it truly has been. His first season, he only played 4 games. Second season, he only played 11 games. Had 1,814 yards. He didn't even crack over 2,000 yards, 8 touchdowns and 12 picks. Obviously, he's got that rushing upside, which everybody likes. But, he can't hit a broadside of a barn. I mean, he had a 47.7% completion percentage. I mean, that is like catastrophically bad. So he's a guy who, he's obviously doing a lot of training. He's prepping for the season, but the Colts went ahead and decided to bring in Daniel Jones. So is Anthony Richardson even going to win the job? But if he doesn't win the job, or if he does and he flames out, where's he going to go? I mean, someone will have to believe in his talent and potential again. And it's possible just purely because of that somebody will. But the whole idea was with the Colts and Shane Steichen, they thought they could really get the most out of this guy. And really, I would imagine they envisioned him following the footsteps of a Jalen Hurts type of player. Just hasn't materialized.
Yeah, it's interesting because, they took a project quarterback, and yet I feel like they still fully haven't invested in Anthony Richardson and really just given him all the opportunities that he truly needs. And they keep fiddling around with all these other veteran quarterbacks and just not allowing him to make his mistakes and play out there. It was a bad look. He quit on his team last year. Like, I get all of that. But to me, they've kind of just stunted the growth in there with the lack of playing time that he has had. Because it's just when you take a project guy who already didn't play a ton of football in college, he really just needed every opportunity to play as many snaps as possible and continue to learn. So with Anthony Richardson, I mean, this is going to be a pivotal year because, like, if he can't beat out Daniel Jones to play this year and have a really good year, like, I don't know who's going to want to take a chance on Anthony Richardson after this.
Not to mention the Colts will have to decide whether or not they're going to pick up his fifth-year option because that'll be his third season. And if they don't, that's a pretty telling sign as to where they stand with him.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's already a pretty telling sign that they already went aggressively towards Daniel Jones already.
Oh, absolutely. So who's our next player here, Joe?
Yeah, I'm sure this one pains you as again, Steve, but we're going to go with tight end Dalton Kincaid of the Buffalo Bills. Guy who really came out in his rookie year. Had a solid year for a rookie tight end, 73 receptions, 673 yards, and a couple of touchdowns as well. But, coming up similarly to some of these other guys that we're talking, this was a guy that you're looking at, whether or not the Bills will want to use the fifth-year option on him. He's entering his third year in the league, so he's going to have to deliver not only for fantasy but also in the NFL to make the Bills want to pick up that fifth-year option if he wants to, to have this stability. And I think it would be nice from a dynasty standpoint to know where Dalton Kincaid's also ultimately going to end up. But one thing that is concerning about his ability to deliver is just the fact that, Dawson Knox is still there, which I know you might not worry about as much, but Dawson Knox being on the field, when Dawson Knox is injured, Dalton Kincaid was great. Whenever Dawson Knox is on the field, I know he's more of that run blocking tight end, but he just seems to take away from Dalton Kincaid. And we'll see. I know there's talks of, last season, Dalton Kincaid would have been better because, dealing with a couple of different injuries. See if that's truly the case. But, he's going to have to deliver in order to bring up his dynasty value that's taken a hit since, his rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely pains me to involve him here in this group, but I think it's deserving, and you have to look at it with an objective eye. I do think he has a possibility to break out, but my concern with him primarily is honestly his durability. He hasn't been, of late. Right. I feel like he just hasn't been himself. And, it's football. I mean, a lot of these players are playing with some ailment towards the end of the year. None of them are 100% healthy. It's a physical sport. But I just would have expected him to be more of a red zone threat, and he really hasn't been. Only 2 touchdowns in each of his first 2 seasons. Would have thought that they try to get him more involved. I don't know if it's just because, how Joe Brady runs the offense. You got to remember he was not the offensive coordinator when they drafted Kincaid.
Right.
That was Ken Dorsey at the time. So, obviously, Bill Brady took over mid-season at that point, and went from there. But I just want, obviously, McDermott's a defensive-minded head coach. So he's got to rely on that offensive coaching staff and how they decide to execute.
Yeah, I think ultimately the red zone just not where he's going to have success. I mean, just because the Bills like to run the ball. I mean, they had a ton of rushing touchdowns between James Cook last year and Josh Allen. And Kincaid's like, he's not like that big body guy that's going to box you out in the red zone and really, that's where Dawson Knox would thrive. He's the bigger body guy to box somebody out in there. He's a guy that, needs that space. And if you can't beat him with the route running, then he's just not going to be open in the red zone.
Not to mention that everybody's mentality does not do him any favors.
No. Yeah. And that's part of the problem with the pass catching options in the Bills offense.
Exactly. So next guy we're going to be talking about here is another Jaguar. We talked about Jaguars before. That's going to be running back Travis Etienne of the Jaguars. He's in his club option year for the Jaguars. Next season, he'll be a free agent. He'll be 27 years old. So he's in a money-making year. He's got to perform if he's wanting to get that second contract. If you look at Etienne, it's kind of concerning. If you look at the stats, I mean, he obviously missed his rookie season, had a great season in 2022, followed that up in 2023 with it. I shouldn't say 2022 was great. 2023 was truly great. 2022 was, going in the right direction. But this past season, he really took a turn for the worst. Averaged only 3.7 yards per carry, 3.8 last year. And, he wasn't as much of a receiving threat, only 39 catches to 58 last year. So at the end of the day, you also have Tutin, who they drafted later in the draft there. They got Tank Bigsby. So Tutin's, he's got a lot of speed, a lot of burst. That was a lot of reason why they liked Etienne back in the day. So, we don't know this coaching staff was not there when Travis Etienne was selected. So if they feel that Etienne is not the type of guy that they need in that running back room, they'd be happy to have him walk. And then who's going to pay him? So that's I think we both think that's concerning.
Yeah, it really is concerning. And I think the biggest thing that's concerning is, like you mentioned, the drafting of Bashal Tutin, who's a really explosive player. He's good in the pass game. And, it's just crazy. Like Travis Etienne last year, he just didn't have the explosiveness. Like Tank Bigsby had a better average per carry last year and was far more explosive than Travis Etienne. And that's where he was thriving. So, and with the new GM, new coaching staff, as you mentioned, like if he's not going to show it and deliver this year, then, I think the writing's on the wall that they're going to go, elsewhere, and it could easily just be Bigsby and Tutin.
So who's our next player, Joe?
Our next player, I know this one affects me probably more than you, Steve, but that's going to be wide receiver Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. He's a guy that I really loved last year. Got burned by him because he only played 8 games due to those concussions, and that's part of the concern with his value going forward is just the concussion issues that he's had. We saw him pop up in college. Now they're popping up, in the pros here as well, especially last season. But maybe without Derek Carr throwing the hospital balls, we'll see what the new quarterback of the Saints here will do for him, and if he can rebound. But I think he's gonna have to deliver. He's under contract this year, and then he's got the club option next year. He'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2027. But I think everyone is just kind of in limbo of what to do with Chris Olave because of the concussions, and not sure how healthy he is or if he's going to have to deal with them again. That's really the concern. So he's going to have to deliver, and hopefully he can stay on the field the whole season to alleviate those concerns and raise up that value.
I think he's probably one of the players that has the highest level of uncertainty because we just really haven't heard a lot from him now. That the Saints accepting the 5th-year option was big. I didn't know whether they would or not. So for them to do that does bode well when considering his future. So some may be surprised by this, but he had 2 really good years to begin. But like you said, those concussions are scary. And as a result, it's like, how much confidence do you truly have? And now you got Tyler Shuck, more than likely the rookie, going to be, the starting quarterback. Can they make a quick connection? Honestly, the best thing for him, I think, would be getting out of New Orleans and starting scratch somewhere else. But who even knows if they'd be willing to do that? Especially with accepting the 5th-year option, it would seem to indicate that they're not trying to do that. So he's of all the players, he probably is the most mysterious. But because of that, we'll have a better idea of where he stands next year, and that's when the dust is going to truly settle.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, there's a ton of questions heading into this season, due to the concussions and just his overall health. But I do think, could they have accepted the 5th-year option too, just to, make that decision for other teams so they wouldn't have to? Maybe it makes him a little bit more favorable that he wouldn't just be operating under a 1-year contract and they'd have to decide whether to extend him or not on a new team. Could
very well be the case. I mean, the money is guaranteed, but fully guaranteed. But that if he were to be traded, the team would not be on the hook for that money. So as a result, I think they would probably be okay. But if they trade him next year, that's a complete savings on their end. So, and they may even be willing to eat some of the contract. I mean, the Saints cap situation's pretty bad. Yeah. So, so I mean, doesn't preclude them from trading him, and could very well that might be a benefit for some teams. That might be why they did that.
Yeah, I think if Tyler Shuck is the starter, I think that'll still be fine for Chris Olave. I think it might affect a guy more like Rashid Shaheed, just in those deep long shots that he's accustomed to getting.
Next guy we're going to be talking about here is quarterback Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers, guy who I was very, very high on in the beginning of the draft, season there before he was drafted. He's gotten better. He showed a lot of improvement this past year with Dave Canales, but is it enough, right? I mean, they brought in Tetairoa McMillan now. They've got Xavier Legette. Heck, they brought back Hunter Renfrow. See how much he has left in the tank. They've got Adam Thielen. So they do have some options out there for him. Chuba Hubbard, had a breakout year last year. So they have some pieces, but we really believe this is a prove-it year for Bryce Young. If Bryce Young, let's say, ultimately reverts back to his old playing style of last year when he lost the job and Andy Dalton had to take over, that might be it for Bryce Young. I mean, if Dave Canales is trying to keep his job, he's going to be going elsewhere. And if we've seen all that much that another team would want to bring this guy in and have him be a starter, I mean, you could hope for a Baker Mayfield reclamation project or Sam Darnold, but those don't grow on trees. Like, that's very rare for a guy that, is basically a retread quarterback be brought into another franchise and they end up striking gold with him. I feel like that doesn't happen often.
No, it doesn't, but I think you just have to go to the right situations. It would be interesting, like if it doesn't end up working out in Carolina and Canales ultimately just goes to Tepper and be like, look, I didn't draft this guy. This is not my guy. I've tried to fix him. It's just not working right. And I need to go, you need to let me go ahead and get my guy. I mean, it would be interesting though, like say Bryce Young were to land on the Rams, with Sean McVay. Stafford's not getting any younger. Don't know what his future is going to hold. I think him on the Rams, I think that's where if he goes to the right situation, gets with the offensive minded head coach. I mean, that's really what it took for Baker. I mean, heck, he had went over to the Rams with Sean McVay, had the great Thursday night comeback for the win, and then that really changed his image. Baker was like, bad goods at that point. I mean, he was the lowest of the low with coming out of Carolina. He has that big Thursday night game with McVay, and then it's just like everything kind of opened up from there. And obviously, he landed in Tampa with Canales and was able to do wonders with Baker.
That's for sure. So, Joe, who is our ninth player here that we think must deliver?
Our ninth player here, we're going to go with running back Javonte Williams of the Dallas Cowboys. Somehow I get to talk about him again here, but look, he signed a really low deal with the Dallas Cowboys, 1 year, $3 million. And it's really, put up or shut up. He, outside of his rookie year in Denver, he's been very disappointing. And since the injury, his average yards per carry been just over 3. He's been pretty disappointing. And, Cowboys, address the offensive line at the guard position. We'll see how that improves them. And honestly, Dallas could be a better situation, with the weapons that he has on the outside. Dak Prescott, as long as he can stay healthy. But if he doesn't show it this year, Javonte is as good as dead in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, he got a great opportunity. I mean, he got such a low contract to go to the Cowboys. And for the Cowboys only to have drafted Jaden Blue and for him to have this opportunity to really take over the backfield, I mean, they gave him a gift. And he's got to take advantage of it because otherwise, like you said, I don't think a lot of teams are going to be interested in his services.
No. And I mean, the fact that, just shows you how much the Broncos didn't want him back. $3 million is all it took to get Javonte. And, I don't know, with that low of a contract too, how many other teams were really involved and interested in him.
Right. I mean, it wouldn't seem that there were that many. It was probably just the Cowboys. Or he may have prioritized the Cowboys because he thought he could get a starting role. Who knows? But it's a prove-it year for him because if he does what he did in Denver, then no one's going to be interested. Again, this is his opportunity to reclaim his career.
Yep. He's got to put up a shut up and then possibly, ball out this year so he can cash out a new contract next year.
Last guy we're going to be talking about here is probably somewhat of a surprise to you. We're going to go with wide receiver Jaylen Waddle, a guy who, over the past few years that he's been in the NFL, you would say, why would you say that? But if you look recently, last season he had his worst year of his career, only 744 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, only played in 15 games. He missed he only played 14 games the year prior to that. And if you look at this Miami team, they're in a very interesting situation. I mean, You obviously have Tua there, but it's Mike McDaniel supposedly on the hot seat. Tyreek Hill, he's no longer going to be there. So if nothing else, isn't necessarily to say that these other guys may flame out. Waddle isn't necessarily per se going to flame out unless he can't just stay on the field. But when he was brought into the league, people have thought he came in at the same time Jamar Chase did. And people had thought that he could be that type of caliber of player. Obviously, he's not even close to a Jamar Chase. But, when Tyreek Hill's no longer there, he has an opportunity to be the number one receiver. Now, without McDaniel, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But, we know that he's there now. And if he hasn't, so that he can step up, they may have to go get another receiver to replace Tyreek Hill. And Jaylen Waddle is now just that second fiddle. This is an opportunity where we feel like he could really, take over that position. But can he stay healthy? Can he stay dependable?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question. It's, no denying that Jaylen Waddle's got the talent, he's got the speed, and he knows how to get open and find the space in this offense. But it's really just, his health and durability. And if he's not going to, be able to stay healthy, then he's not a reliable player. And then it's really just hard for him to, gauge his dynasty value, because it's frustrating because you see the potential, you see the big plays that he is able to make, but then it's like, he's going with back injury, and that just seems to be a reoccurring thing. And similar to like Olave, I mean, that's really just, he's the next like riskiest player, just in terms of you don't know when that back injury is going to flare up or when he's going to just decide to leave the field. But he definitely has the tools to be a good receiver. It's just a matter of, can he stay on the field?
Yeah, I think those are good examples, right? Those are guys that have shown promise, probably the most promise of these 10 guys that we talked about. Like they've been able to produce. But with the health issues, with the lack of dependability, and you always say the best availability is dependability, right?
Best ability is availability.
That's it. I knew it was something like that. We haven't said that in a while. But you get my point, right? Like, he needs to be available. And if he's not available for his team, then it's going to cost him.
Yeah, and ultimately, if he's not available for the Dolphins, he's not available for your dynasty team either.
No, he's not. And at the end of the day, there's other players that you probably would prefer to have instead of a guy like him, who can still, retain some value, but he may never be that elite guy that we all hoped he could be.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if he could be that elite guy, but I do think he could be, a solid wide receiver too. And even in the NFL, like, I don't know if he could necessarily be the one if Tyreek Hill wasn't there. Still think he might benefit from having a true number one, just similar to like Devonta Smith. I don't know if he could truly be an alpha number one wide receiver. I kind of lump him and Waddle in that same boat there.